Ross Noble here, and I'm on this show right now.
Hi, it's Rochelle Hughes.
Hi, I'm Astro, and I'm Alex from UB40.
Hello, it's Amanda Holmes here.
Thursday breakfast on Source FM with Benjamin Macon. Well, good morning. Thank you very much indeed for tuning in to Source FM this morning with me, Ben Macon, for your Thursday morning science and celebrity breakfast show. Got some very, very exciting stuff today. We're going to continue with a little bit of, well, bit of a showdown. I started this on Coast FM last night. Going to carry it on this morning on Source because, you know, we just need a bit of time to get to the bottom of this. Basically, I'm having a contest, okay, between two legendary radio duos. I want you, the listener, to tell me who you think is the coolest radio duo, okay? Is it first radio duo, Dick and Dom? Don't really need, you know, any introduction, do they really? Gonna get them on the show. Had them on a while back, actually, but I'm gonna play the highlights for you today. So Dick and Dom are joining us this morning. Whoop! And yeah, in case you're wondering, yeah, we do play the game. You know what I'm talking about, the game. Yeah, I get that out of the way straight away, and then we get chatting about mad stuff, actually, so we'll get them on. And contesting them for their position of the ultimate radio duo today, it is, in fact, our very own Sasha and Dave. Professor Sasha Dall and Professor Dave Hosken. They're on the show as well. They're going to do another... Oh, come on, that's enough of that music, isn't it? Can't concentrate with that mad noise on. And it's a great theme tune, though, but yeah, let's get that off. But they're going to be talking about today, Sasha and Dave. They're going to carry on a debate, actually, that I started with them a while ago. And I think this is really interesting. So if you're out there and you're the kind of person who sits there and ponders, if only I could just tune in this morning on Source and hear two top professors chat about what life is. You know, how do we define life? What is it? You know, we're going to delve a little bit into life on other planets. And it's a great debate, okay? So I really do urge you to check that out. And very simply, whilst this is going on, you, the listener, need to tell me who you think is the coolest radio duo, okay? Is it Dick and Dom, or is it our very own Sasha and Dave? You decide. That's on today. We also have a comedian joining us today. This is fantastic. We have the fantastic Lucy Porter. She's on the show today. She's actually advocating a fantastic government-backed initiative. The government wants 2018 to be the year of engineering. So they're really pressing for school kids to basically get interested in STEM, science subjects, science, technology, engineering, and maths. So this is pretty cool stuff. So we have her on the show. We'll chat about homework. We chat about cool stuff. We also, you know, chat a little bit about, you know, local stuff in Cornwall because, you know, me and her, we're like best buddies. Well, we are now anyway, so don't worry about that. We'll get this on for you anyway. And I know this is a bit different for you, but I thought, why not this morning? Because guess what? Hitman 2, brand new video game, is out this week. So I have on the show the makers of the game. Yeah, they're going to be chatting a little bit about it. When, you know, what kind of stuff you can see in the game and all this kind of thing. And I must say, you know, I'll tell you a bit more later, but the game's amazing, actually. They sent it to me to check it out, and woo, it's amazing. I'll get to that a bit later. So there's going to be video games on the show today as well. And also, delighted, actually, because we have the return of a bit of a star in the world of advertising. That's Karen Fraser MBE. We had her on the show last year. So she's returned, and you know what? This might come as good news or bad news, depending on who you are. But I'm afraid today I am breaking the Christmas silence. Yes, I'm going to play a Christmas song. I'm sorry. It's time. I'm sorry. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're there on the show today talking about Christmas ads and Christmas songs. I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to play it. So there's going to be Christmas songs today. Okay, it's nearly December. Come on, you can start to get a bit festive. It's my fault anyway. It doesn't count. It doesn't count if I play a Christmas song. Okay, that'll be towards the end of the show. So you can, you know, if you really must, you can tune out at that point. I don't mind. But I mean, I do mind. Please don't tune out. But anyway, shall we get started? I think this morning. Now this is always tough because I don't know whether to treat you with a bit of Rod Stewart because I don't know. You kind of deserve a bit. But I don't know whether I should just jump straight in there with an interview for you this morning as well. You know, it's tough. It's tough. You know what? I am going to start with an interview. I'm going to invite to the stage, first of all, the fantastic comedian Lucy Porter. Lucy, here she is. She's an amazing woman, actually. Very, very amusing woman. And she's here today to chat, as I said, a little bit about science, technology, engineering and maths, and encouraging kids to get involved. Good stuff, hey? Let's get it on. Thursday breakfast on Source FM.
Hello, I'm Lucy
Lucy Porter, the comedian, and I'm a close personal friend of the wonderful Ben Mackin.
Well, thank you very much, Lucy. Appreciate that. Fantastic to have you here. So I'm afraid this is a step down to what you used to, because I'm afraid you're on Cornish radio. Yeah, Cornwall, that tiny place.
Couldn't be happier. Could not be happier. Well, a lot of my family are in Cornwall, so they will be listening then. So.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, they'll be checking on you again.
I know, I don't get down there often enough, really, because I go down, my in-laws live in St Agnes, and so that's
beautiful.
kind of as far down as I get, generally.
Oh, there's a great brewery in St Agnes. I mean, I will get on topic straight after this, but there is a great brewery. Driftwood Spas, go there next time. Anyway, I should probably get us onto the topic, shouldn't I? Sorry about that, Lucy. I'm being dreadful.
Right.
I'm being dreadful as always, but
I'm
as you are,
terrible. I love a chat. I always love a chat.
I mean, as you already said, you're a close personal friend, so we have to catch up a bit, don't we, before we start?
We do.
But let's get chatting about the year of engineering, because this is something that I totally support. I think this is fantastic, encouraging young children to get involved with engineering, because it's just such a useful and fascinating area, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I didn't realise just the varied careers that you can have, because, I sort of hear engineering and I go, oh, it's sort of very mathsy, isn't it? And, you have to be interested in calculations and that's it. But there's, everything involves engineering. And when you look into it, especially when you're talking to kids about what they want to do, then you think, oh, yeah, God, it's a great motivation to sort of study things like the STEM subjects, your sciences and your maths, because, my daughter wants to be a doctor, and I'm like, well, that's brilliant, and, there's loads of stuff that you can do to kind of pursue that career. And, I've always fancied being a bridge builder.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. And because I can see, actually, you were asked to provide some tips to help parents actually helping their kids with homework, because this must be something that, I don't personally have kids, but I'm sure that when I do, this will definitely apply to me. You probably think, oh no, where do I start with this? I don't understand any of this, but I'm going to have to try and help them.
I know, well, actually, because there's been some research done for the year of engineering, which is 86% of parents who help with their homework, with the kids' homework, say that they struggle with it, which I fully relate to, because my kids are only 8 and 6, and I'm already baffled by the stuff. So, I try and help, but I think I end up sometimes, I feel like I'm doing more harm than good, because I'm like, oh, now your 9 times table, right. Now there's a very clever way of doing this, which is, hang on, so I'll get one hand and put 5 fingers, and I end up just in a tangle of fingers, and they're no further forward, and I'm then having to run to the internet and look it up. But that is the beauty of it, though, is that actually we do live in an age where, as a parent, you can cheat and you can help your children by consulting good old Dr. Internet.
Yeah, exactly. Comes in Dr. Wikipedia helps me quite often, actually.
Yeah. I know. I do try and check a few different sources for confirmation, but
sure.
It is. Yeah, the nice thing is, though, in this research as well, they did find that 94% of children really appreciate having help with their maths and science homework, even if they know their parents are useless.
Yeah.
It's nice just to have the company. And I think what it is actually my kids love it when they find out that they know more than me.
Yeah. It's
nothing
proud moment.
Oh, exactly. Well, because my son was trying to explain this thing, the extended method or the expanded method that they use in his schools to do their addition and subtraction and stuff. And he had to explain it to me, and he loved it. He was like, Mummy, no, you're doing it wrong, Mummy. No, you need to try again. Try harder. And I did. I felt like, God, it was like being back at school myself.
Yeah. No, I can imagine that. Yeah, the test turns around, doesn't it? And you think, oh no.
It does. I thought they were still at the age where they thought that I knew everything, but it turns out they are discovering that I know nothing, and they're quite enjoying it.
Now they've got power over you. They know more chemistry or something. They're going to have their specific powers over you now. You've got to watch out.
They do. Because actually, the things that they do now, I think that as a child of the 80s, all we had was the Rubik's Cube, which was great, don't get me wrong. But now, like my kids, we were looking on, there's a website which goes on with the Year of Engineering, and they have lots of little activities and things that you can do to encourage your kids to sort of experiment with engineering. And a lot of it is about materials, and so they make slime. And I mean, this is a huge thing for my kids. They're like, oh, great, another slime recipe, because they're obsessed, absolutely obsessed with slime. And like kids at their school are like slime dealers, where they make their own batches. I mean, it's like Breaking Bad. They come into school with batches of their homemade
the
slime.
Heisenberg of slime.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Some of them are going to get pretty rich, I think. But cause there was another one. My kids got really excited because on the website there was this one where you only need corn flour and water, I think, but you can make like quicksand. And so it's sort of like slime, but it's liquid, and then if you punch it, then it is solid. And they were so excited about finding that, because it was like it's going to give them the edge in the playground. They've got a new thing that they can show their mates. So it's nice when you see them getting excited. I think it helps you sort of feel like, oh, well, even if I don't have all the answers and I don't really understand some of this stuff, at least I'm encouraging them to get involved, which is nice.
Well, that quicksand sounds cool to me, let alone the kids. I might have to go and try that myself.
I know, it is really interesting. It's all about, I was looking at it and I thought, I'll remember the science behind this so that I'll be able to tell people, and I've immediately forgotten it. This is why, because I'm 45 and not 8, I cannot remember anything anymore.
Well, I must say, because I work in a science lab actually down here in Cornwall, and it's always absolutely fantastic seeing young ones coming in and hopefully being inspired by seeing things under the microscope and things like that. And I just think it's science and engineering is just such a fantastic area for them to be involved with, and I love seeing new kids coming in and thinking, this looks cool. I'm interested in this. Actually, it's not just the boring stuff that I thought it was.
Yeah, well, I think the joy of just sort of realising how much you can do with engineering and how much fun science can be, is because I was an arts student, and I went very much to English and history, and I think a lot of parents feel more confident helping out with sort of, humanities or languages, because you feel like you've got a grasp on those. And if you aren't someone who is sciencey, like my family are all medical and scientific, and I always felt like I've chosen the other path. And I'm now really enjoying, and I'm thinking I might do physics. I did physics GCSE, but I've forgotten all of it, and I'm thinking I would like to do a physics A-level, which I think would be a nice little side project.
Yeah, go for it. That'd be cool. And also, it'll give you, I'm sure it'll give you more material as well for your tours as well. I'm sure it must do. It will do. I know it.
Oh, yes. I know. Well, I'll be Robin Ince, he's a very sciencey comedian, I've always sort of watched him and thought, well, that's quite interesting. Or Dara O'Brien, of course. He's an astrophysicist by degree. So there's a lot of, I think that sort of wondering curiosity about the world is something that, comedians naturally, you go, oh God, I really want to find out about this stuff. So it is, we are very childlike. I think that's why I quite enjoy helping my kids with the homework, because I get more excited than they do about it.
Well, that's fantastic. Thanks, Lisa. I won't keep you for much longer, of course. I know you've got plenty more things to do today, but I just want to say, good luck for the upcoming dates on your tour. And it's still going on, which is awesome. The Pass It On tour, and I know there's a bunch of upcoming dates for people if they want to check that out. Awesome stuff. And also, I'd love to just point listeners in the direction of the Year of Engineering website, because I know the government's basically set one up, haven't they?
Yes, so there's the yearofengineering.gov.uk is where you can find all the little experiments and things you can do. My kids and I made a smartphone projector out of a cardboard box and a little magnifying glass, and that was, it got fraught at times, I'll be honest, Ben. There were tears and sellotape flung, but it was very successful in the end.
Yeah, so the result was good. That's all that matters. That's fantastic.
It is.
Thanks, Lucy. I'll just finish up then, if that's all right with you, with a question for you, and that is just a song request. I'd love to get a song choice out of you, if that's all right, Lucy. I'd love to play something, if you're interested. You don't have to, but play anything.
Yeah, no, I tell you what, I'm going to choose for with an engineering theme, because I've always liked the idea of building bridges. Can we go for Bridge Over Troubled Water?
Oh, but of course! Oh, what a fantastic choice. Haven't heard that in too long. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you, my love.
I'll let you go, but thanks so much for your time today. Thanks.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for being so enthusiastic. It's fantastic.
No,
I think it really helped that we're all kind of getting into the sort of encouraging the kids.
Totally getting into it now. No, well, thanks, Lucy. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much. Have a lovely day, Ben.
Okay, it's time to kick off the radio showdown this morning. Alright, so get texting for your favourite radio duo. Is it Dick and Dom who are coming up right now? Or is it our very own resident professors, Sasha and Dave? You gotta text me, alright? You gotta let me know. You can message me on Facebook if you got me on there. You can find my details on the Source FM website. Anyway, shall I invite Dick and Dom to the stage now? I think it's about time. This is a highlight from a discussion I had with them. They were actually part of a campaign giving out the ultimate school trip to a school, and I got the chance to interview them. So of course we do get the chance to reminisce about school holidays, which is pretty cool, but also we just get the chance to just be moronic, basically, which is awesome. It's fantastic. Exactly what you'd hope if you had Dick and Dom on the show. Fantastic. Here they are. Let's get them straight on.
Round 1, fight!
First up, it's Dick and Dom. But as any interviewer knows, there was just one little game that I had to play.
I'm Dick, otherwise known as Richard McCourt, but no one knows who he is. And I am Dom, otherwise known as Dominic Wood, but no one knows who he is. Put together, we're called Dick and Dom.
Well, a very warm welcome to you, chaps. I'm afraid I'm gonna have to get something out of my system. I think you probably know what that is, but I thought if I just do it straight off.
Defence can be many things. I don't know what he's talking about.
No, it's probably not that bad, but I'm just gonna have to say it, guys. It probably happens all the time, but bogeys. Okay, there we go. I've said it. I've said it.
Very good. That was limp like a wet cabbage. 8 a.m. in the morning, bogeys.
Well, I was going to say.
Very Cornish, by the way.
No, not too Cornish.
Surprised they let you in.
I know. I was. Well, the thing is, I just didn't speak.
I'm from Devon, and every time I go and see my mates down in Cornwall, I have to do a full security check.
Yeah, they give you a pasty, right? And if you don't enjoy it quite as much as you should, then you're in deep trouble.
Now that Dick and Dom had well and truly graced the studio, I decided to ask them about school trips.
It was basically anything to leave the classroom.
Yeah.
And it was that moment when you got on the school bus and you thought, this is my time to mess about. And yes, I am now in control of the teacher.
As long as you get the back seat, though, right? Otherwise, it's all over in the coach.
You have to be cool to be on the back seat.
Yeah, well...
We weren't cool, we were on the front seat. We were about a third back, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I was never on the back seat, never made
like
it.
our careers now.
Absolutely not, guys, absolutely not.
He's got the man flu, so... A little man flu. Oh dear, this is Dom. Very ill.
Oh no, well, I'm sorry to hear that, chaps. Surely they've got some ibuprofen for the studio. Back seat aside, really, in the coach. I love school trips. Actually, we got to go skiing and things. I think it's great that skiing. How cool is that? Yeah, it was not too bad, is it? I was really pleased with that. Yeah, we got to go skiing. That was one of the trips.
I'm from Sheffield. We got put down the pit. Have a look at that coal being extracted. There you go. I went to a cliff and looked at some honeycomb weathering.
Oh wow! Now
you
that's.
know what that is?
I'm not quite sure actually.
It's when a cliff is made up of large stones as well. The wind batters against the cliff, causing the rocks and stones to fall out, leaving behind the pockmarks of the stones, which look like honeycomb. Honeycomb weathering.
Well, there you go.
That's not skiing, is it? Boring.
Well, I mean, that's a bit of knowledge, though. That's all right, though. That's,
Honeycomb weathering.
Yeah, okay. It could have been worse. You could have come away with nothing at all, Could have been dull, and then you couldn't even remember that, and then that really would have been, I suppose if lucky you weren't in Cornwall, really, because you're saying, went down the pit, but actually you would have been straight down the mine in Cornwall, wouldn't you?
That's true. Oh, you definitely would. Straight in the pasty factory. Anyway, the interesting thing about this survey that was done is it's shown that kids today think school trips are the best thing about school because they can go out and learn. Not like what we did, where we just went, oh, it's a day off school. Kids these days actually want to go out and learn something.
Now it's time to drop some knowledge on Dick and Dom. How about I tell them my fact about the Cornish pasty?
Well, did you know, I'm not actually sure whether this fact is true or not, but I don't know whether it's one of those kind of urban legends or not, really, but I've heard that apparently the original Cornish pasty actually had, half of it was actually like a dessert. So you had like one half that was meat and stuff, whatever, and it had like a separated bit, right? And then there was jam and cream and whatever, something like that.
What, stuffed in the crust?
Yeah, in half of the pasty. So half of your...
mate, do your stuffed crust pasty with jam and cream.
Oh.
Yeah, like a cream tea.
That's it.
Keep editing that out. Hang on, man flew off. What do you go for? I think you should patent that one. You have your cream tea in the crust, and then your meat and stuff in there. I heard. Do you know what the story behind Oggy is?
No, I've actually got no idea. What is it?
Okay, Oggy, which is otherwise another name for a pasty, down the mines.
Yeah.
They used to shout out at lunchtime, Oggy! And if you wanted one, you shouted out, Oi! So that's where Oggy, I comes. Now we know. There you go.
There we go.
That's right.
Guys, come on, this is getting far too educational. It's great. Little tidbits of knowledge getting dropped left, right and centre. Fantastic. And, you were saying that your school trips, you can remember them being fairly dull, but you said you did drop a bit of knowledge on us. But have you got any special memories that you'd like to share today? Give you a little chance to share some special memories of school trips. Have you got any? Thinking.
Yeah, rubbish packed lunches. Rubbish packed lunch. Some schools were lucky enough; their mums would prepare their packed lunches. What about you, Rich? No. I was going to say about the school trip where we went swimming, and I got pushed in the pool. Someone pushed me so hard when I jumped in, my swim shorts fell off. Rubbish packed lunches. I think where you just got an apple, rubbish bag of what were they? KP crisps, I think they were. And what else? A cucumber sandwich. And a box of orange. Maybe just a slice of bread. No.
Not just healthy stuff. Basically, that's no good. I would be livid. Yeah.
Marvellous. Well, good luck editing that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
You got the point across. It's got joy written all over it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sound bites in there.
Thanks, gents. It was absolutely brilliant chatting to you. Yeah, keep up the good work, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Speak soon. Bye.
Dick and Dom, ladies and gents, those guys are just too cool, aren't they? But are they cooler than Sasha and Dave? Only time will tell. You're voting, remember. Get your answer to me. We're going to get Sasha and Dave on in their discussion now, so you can compare, you can decide. This discussion actually is a really, really cool one. I think you're going to really like this. And this is all about, so I basically went to them and I said, guys, okay, as two leading professors, give me your opinion, because I just want to know, what is life? So no biggie, right? Just explain life. So this is Professor Sasha Dall and Professor Dave Hosken answering my question. Guys, what is life?
Very, very briefly, I suggested two definitions for life might be heritability, so making copies of yourself, copies like yourself. And I also suggested an alternative definition of life is the transmission of information over time. And either of those, they're kind of related to each other. One is, obviously making copies of yourself. That's transmitting information in one sense. But I suggested they might be the two ways you could determine what was life and what was non-life. What do you think, Sash?
I think those are probably a little too broad, in the sense I think you have to be a bit more specific about what you mean by replication and what you mean by transmitting information, because there are probably things out there that transmit information that probably aren't life yet. There's certainly plenty of things that we've created that do this that we wouldn't consider to be alive just yet. I mean, replication has been debated a lot as a kind of key aspect of life, and if you've got replication, then you've got heredity. Yep. And all the rest of it. But you still run into problems because there are autocatalytic chemical reactions that, the term autocatalytic, it means that they catalyze themselves, they create themselves, they manage themselves, they stimulate themselves, and those things are not quite life yet, but they have some of the hallmarks, and they're probably related to early life.
Yep.
But there is also a kind of older... So these kind of definitions that are focused on replication have come in kind of now, and since the kind of 50s, 60s, the kind of deep thinking about evolutionary systems kind of world. But up till then, a lot of people focus... And I'm not sure that you can completely rule out some of the older considerations, which are things like they've got to be able to manage some sort of homeostatic mechanisms as well, so physiology, some aspect that they kind of control their environments in some way. And under those definitions, people didn't like the notion that viruses were alive. So there was a lot of debate about whether viruses...
Well, and I was just thinking about selfish genes that replicate within your genome. They don't actually do anything in terms of maintaining homeostasis within the organism, but they're certainly alive and self-replicating.
Well, they're self-replicating, but whether they're alive, again, this is these are the things that people that have exercised people.
So the other one that I just thought of when you were talking actually was, what about something that metabolizes but doesn't reproduce? Yes. Now, it might not exist, but we could imagine an organism that is homeostatic, that maintains itself against the insults of the environment, but doesn't reproduce.
Think of your thermostat. I mean, you just have to think to artificial systems, some of the computer systems that we've created, they are self-regulating to some degree.
They transmit information in some sense, or they maintain information.
Okay, well, the information side of things is a bit more. I'm not really delving into that one yet, but we can go into that one. I mean, there is one. I mean, it's kind of very much aligned with what I'm kind of interested in general, is the kind of informational properties of living systems, and there is a sense that that living systems have or encode or contain a much higher degree of information.
Yep.
So ordered complexity, if you like, if you want to come up with a specification of what we're talking about when we talk about high levels of information. So they're complex, they've got many bits, and yet they're highly ordered. They reform themselves over and over again. This is the self-replication kind of idea, and so it means that living systems are more complicated, more ordered than anything else that we know about in the universe as a result. And so people have argued that that information is a key characteristic of life in this sense. This kind of ordered doesn't mean there's no information. There's no order anywhere else.
Quasars are transmitting information over long periods of time, aren't they? In some sense.
Sure. Well, anything actually, anything that influences the world can be a source of information. Now you have to distinguish that from stuff that has been designed, if you want, or shaped, or specified, created, put together, or the key aspects of how it's put together are linked to its ability to sort of transmit information. So those are two things you also have to distinguish, because information is everywhere. Information, it just comes from patterns, basically, non-randomness, variation. So you need both variation, but you also need non-randomness. And then you can use, if you have a receiver, something that cares about making sense of the world, then there are plenty of sources of information. And in that sense, quasars, absolutely, they're doing things, doing very dramatic and energetic things all the time, and so that they're producing, a kind of an effect on the universe that we can measure and can provide us with information, and we do use it as a source of information to help us to understand how the universe works.
Would you agree that with the to a first approximation, the transmission, the making copies of yourself would be a good place to start? If you went to planet X and you were an exobiologist scuttling around and you came across something that makes copies of itself with reasonably high fidelity, that would be a good place to start.
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a committed Darwinist in a sense. In the sense that there is no other process other than Darwinian selection that we know about that's naturalistic, that can account for or that can generate the kind of specified complexity, the ordered complexity that we know of as life.
And when you say naturally, you mean without magic?
Yeah, as opposed to supernaturally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the only naturalistic.
That's what we would call in the old days magic. In the old money, that's called magic.
Well, there's debates there. If you're a Christian, you don't believe necessarily that all of the supernatural stuff that you accept exists is magic. Well, it's magic in the sense that it sits outside the rules of the universe. And no, sure. I get what you're saying.
Magic.
Sure, I get what you're saying, but I'm just being, precise and nerdy here.
But stupid and pedantic, some would say.
But yes, no, I agree. I think if there is a way of life, something that we recognise as life existing, that doesn't involve self-replication, we don't know. We don't know how that can work. So according to our understanding of how life can come to be and how life and how we can account for the biodiversity that we know about and that exists on this world, replication, self-replication, having replicators, if you like, is kind of at the heart of it.
Making copies of yourself in some sense.
Well, entities that replicate themselves.
Like you,
entities that replicate themselves.
Yeah.
Currently, they're pretty much all, or not all, but there's a lot. Most of the stuff involves DNA, but people have argued. I mean, prions in your brain can replicate themselves in some sense. Then there's various cultural, units that may or may not be there. But yes,
and RNA, right?
And RNA, and I mean, in the early world,
the nucleic acid stuff.
The RNA was thought to come first, and then DNA was stabler, so it eventually evolved as the kind of the idea. But pre-RNA, it's possible that we had these autocatalytic chemical cycles that were going on in some kind of stabilized medium like clay. So
that's where the good money's at for the start of life, and I've just done inverted commas in the sense that we understand.
Yes, exactly. Or the chemistry. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's a continuum. I mean, I think that's it's something that it's not like suddenly you'll just see something that's clearly alive. These kind of
processes. The light comes on. the fire of the soul sparks into existence. Exactly. But it's interesting you say that, because that's part of the debates about ontogeny, so developmental processes. When does life begin? Is it when the sperm touches the egg? Is it when the sperm penetrates the egg? Is it when the sperm bursts open and spits forth its, and it's the same arguments in some sense. What is the moment of conception? Well, there is no moment, it's a process. And that's effectively what you're saying about the origins of life, or the distinction between life and non-life. It's graded. It's not black and white. There's some grey.
But if you look at living systems and you compare them to non-living systems on average, I think the key thing is the specified. So information content, absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't say. I mean, transmission is there is a sense that information is transmitted via replication across generations, absolutely. And so, in some sense, you're right. But I would be more comfortable thinking about, just being in a general sense that life contains more information than non-life in an equivalent at an equivalent scale of an equivalent kind of build.
But kind of what you're talking about then is, if you can imagine a Venn diagram with a bunch of circles defining certain levels of complexity, certain amounts of heritability, certain amounts of metabolism, or something like that. Sure. And that's where they all overlap. That's where we would unequivocally agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's life.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is what exobiologists. They won't be happy. Exobiologists won't be happy to come back from a moon of Saturn or whatever with autocatalytic cycles of some sort on clay. I mean, they would be quite happy, but they wouldn't be over the moon. Sure, but they wouldn't.
Which moon?
Yes, exactly.
Very droll. Very droll.
Very droll. But yeah, no. I mean, I think that if there's something that resembles a cell, and that then brings you into the full-blown, unequivocal kind of definition of life. Bacteria are clearly alive. Viruses may not be, because they don't often have cells, right? They're kind of parasitic. But then, parasites are an interesting question, because you can still have living systems evolving to become simpler and simpler and simpler and less self-regulating, because they can rely on
viruses. I think are super interesting, because if we think about selfish genes that replicate within the genome.
Sure.
Viruses are effectively those genes that have found a way to jump from host to host.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So they excise themselves from the host DNA, and off they go. And they do make copies of themselves. They just have to steal somebody else's metabolic machinery.
No, sure. But then prion proteins in the brain, it's not a big step. I mean, apart from the fact that viruses often, the replication of viruses, involves nucleic acids, RNA or DNA. prions cannot exist outside of a world where you've got brains and prions are just basically proteins that exist within your brain and the kind of structure of your brain, that when you put two of these together, they'll often act as templates to each other, or one that's set in, and so then you'll get a kind of change in the shape of the way that these proteins set themselves up that can just pass along a chain. Basically, you're replicating that structure over and over again. And that the prions are the kind of things that led to mad cow disease and scrapie and all the rest of it. But the bottom line is that nobody really thinks prions are alive in the way
that even viruses are.
Yeah, in the way that even viruses are.
Yep.
But the bottom line is it's not a stretch. I'm only mentioning it because if your basic notion is that you can, that it's just this kind of replication property, then somebody could come along and argue that prions should therefore be considered to be alive, if you take that to its logical conclusion. So, I think with all of these things, it's a kind of, you can find exceptions to sort of all of these different classification schemes, but it's clear that we kind of do appreciate most of what life's about, and we can, as you say, with the Venn diagram, when everything intersects and you've got all of the things that you need, then you've clearly got life. But when we're talking about it beginning and in any sort of sense, ontological or in any sort of sense,
Okay, so we will continue this debate very shortly. Going to get some songs on for you now, but you know what? There's been a couple of highlights so far, I think. If in this contest between Sasha and Dave and Dick and Dom, there have been a couple of highlights, and if you picked up on them, shall I just remind you?
They won't be happy, exobiologists won't be happy to come back from, a moon of Saturn or whatever, with autocatalytic cycles of some sort on clay. They would be quite happy, but they wouldn't be over
happy.
The moon. Sure, but they wouldn't...
Over which moon?
Yes, exactly.
Very droll. Very droll.
Very droll.
There you go. So we've got jokes for you, and we've got things like this going on as well.
I get what you're saying, but I'm just being... precise and nerdy here.
But stupid and pedantic, some would say.
All right, well, tune in a bit later for the continuation of that discussion. We will delve in a little further into that question. The question, of course, being, guys, what is life? That is the view of two top professors. They're explaining to us what they think life is, two leading bioscientists. We're going to delve into that a little bit more a bit later. We're going to think a little bit about, we're going to actually go into the possibility of life on other planets. This is something we've delved into before in a full-length discussion, actually, and you can get that on the catch-up on the Source FM website if you're interested at all. But we will be delving into a little bit more in this current discussion, talking a little bit about what intelligent life is as opposed to kind of other life, and whether intelligent life might be common or not in the universe. And we go into, of course, talking about the possibility of life in the first place on other planets. And also we have a little think about the future of life, how to ensure that there is a future of Earth life. So interesting stuff. We will continue that debate a bit later. But, I think now it's only fair if I do let the guys choose a couple of songs. What do you think? Probably should, really, shouldn't I? So, I tell you what, let's just get them on to explain to us what kind of tunes they're thinking of today.
It's a song request time, Sasha. Is this what you're thinking, Dave?
This is what I was thinking. I want my song, not Sasha's song. Sasha will get some stupid Prodigy rubbish.
So what are we talking for your song choice?
With a theme.
It can be anything you like, there's no...
Life.
It can be, but it can just be, Rod Stewart if you want, it's fine.
No one is going to vote for Rod Stewart.
Oh, no, I tried that with Dave, and Dave
didn't really a Rod Stewart person.
Okay. Well...
What about Invaders Must Die by Prodigy?
Yeah, it's not my favourite Prodigy song. But it does, it is a bit...
It sort of captures where we've been.
I prefer Firestarter myself, so...
Should we have that?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, we'll have
do
that.
A bit of Firestarter. Because, life can be thought of as some sort of fire.
and if I could throw in there too, I think this captures everything murky and horrible about the human existence. I'm going to go Nick Cave, Jubilee Street.
Oh my God.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Yeah,
a couple of storming choices.
All right, first up, I think it's going to have to be Firestarter, isn't it? Here we go. Great choice from Sasha there. Fantastic, isn't it? Okay, I think now it's only fair if I get Dave straight on, isn't it? Because it's all about fairness on this show. Okay, carrying on with the show then. Thanks for being here. This is Ben on your Thursday morning breakfast show. Now, up next, we will continue with that discussion all around what life is with our two top academics, Sasha and Dave.
It's clear that we kind of do appreciate most of what life's about, and we can, as you say, with the Venn diagram, when everything intersects and you've got all of the things that you need, then yeah, you've clearly got life. But when we're talking about it beginning and in any sort of sense, ontological or in any sort of sense,
Well, and also we are restricted by the fact that we've got one planet.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
We've got an N of one.
Yeah, so that makes it tricky to know in the broadest of senses what all the possibilities are.
Of course. Yeah.
Ben and I talked once before about Alien in the Alien movies. And, is that like this perfect organism? And I said, well, maybe it's got a really weak immune system.
Sure.
No
evidence
but
of
we
that.
just no, yeah, right.
not in the canon, not in the alien canon.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much persist everywhere, and they can live for hundreds of years without a host, and they can live in a vacuum. So they're pretty.
That's kind of like a virus.
Sure, or a tardigrade.
Yeah, like a tardigrade. It's a tardigrade with teeth. But we really do have, even though the diversity of life and near life on our planet is massive, we're limited very much by our experience. And you see that in science fiction movies, where budgetary constraints aside, very many of the aliens tend to be bipedal and intelligent.
Sure. Well, there are also issues associated with if you replayed things, even with very different chemistries and with very different setups, would you likely get something that's kind of intelligent? And, I don't think that that's an unfeasible idea, really, because...
Well, the fact that it evolved here is almost...
Well,
you can argue either way, right? You can say it was a unique event, or you can say on the only planet we've sampled, intelligent life evolved.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So the chances are that intelligent life evolves must be reasonably high.
Well, but that was your argument when we had our argument about
but I'm saying it goes either way, right? You can do it either way.
No, of course you can. And the problem is that all of these arguments are feasible and logically consistent with the evidence. Until we find other examples, or until we've done a lot of looking in a very microscopic way. Because at the moment we haven't done. All we've been doing is remote sensing everything and looking for signals that can only be within 100 light years, probably maximum, just because that's as long as we've been sensing.
That's in distance, and they can probably only be in a very short window of time because we've only been looking.
That's what I mean. No, but the distance and time thing is linked.
It's mixed up.
Because basically, we've only been sensing the space at a high enough resolution to be able for about 100 years. So it means that the furthest places that we can detect life are 100 light years away.
What I was trying to do there was to make clear to the listener that if somebody had been signalling to us 150 years ago, we would have missed it.
Sure. Or it's 150 light years away, right?
Yeah. But you understand what I'm trying to do, just to make that distinction much clearer.
No, sure.
That's kind of...
So we haven't really been looking very... I mean, we barely really started looking properly, especially if we're looking for life that's not interacting with its world at a very, in a very large scale and obvious way, like we are, or something that might be a little bit more advanced than us that's starting to harvest directly from the sun and stuff like this, if most life is basically what has been on Earth for most of the time that life's been on Earth, which is basically bacteria, then we don't know much about anything. I mean, we're getting some samples back from Mars and stuff, and we've probably got a reasonable level of sample from the Moon, but... even those samples you can say are very piecemeal. They're not super conclusive enough for us to say, well, there's unlikely to be anything on the Moon, but there could be. But Mars, for example, I think there's still a reasonable chance that we'll find something that was a bit lifelike. Even if it's just fossils or remains of it, in the past.
I think something I'd really like to come back to just briefly, if you don't mind, Sasha, because you brought this very related concept before, actually, to this kind of information idea, and that's entropy. Because this could be another way, actually, that listeners might be able to kind of even think a bit further about that information side to the definition of life that we'd be kind of grappling with together. Meaning, of course, which direction is entropy allowed to go in?
Yeah, I mean, it's not very complicated, really, at its heart, but it's just the notion that if you've got a system that, you've got a space, if you like, a patch of space, and you've got a bunch of kind of highly specified matter interactions going on in one small portion, if nothing else impacts the world, what you'd expect over time is that the distribution of all of that activity and energy and stuff will just go to the highest statistically probable state, which is where basically it's spread out as much as it can go. Every single measurable unit has an equal chance of having some of it in it. And that's basically what underpins the second law of thermodynamics, is the idea that you'll just see everything spread out from kind of highly specified, kind of highly ordered situations to less ordered situations, and where you've got everything equally likely in every single space and at every single time. And life is a bit weird from this perspective, because what we see is quite the opposite, that we've been seeing more specified order emerging over time, and that's always been a kind of problem to matching physics and biology together and understanding biology from a totally naturalistic perspective. I think nowadays people are happy to, because of course that kind of picture of the second law of thermodynamics assumes that you're not in a kind of, you can't compartmentalize the system. You're thinking of the system as a whole, while if you looked at a certain portion of the system, so long as the whole system is going to spreading out more, you could get localized increases in order, especially if those localized increases in order actually increase the rate at which that process of going from high order to low order happens. And there are some ideas that basically living systems are particularly good entropy producers. So there's a couple of physicists who've speculated that life might be inevitable whenever you have really highly ordered sources of energy that come into existence. So high exergy, as it's called. Sources of high exergy will kind of set up this massive gradient, if you like. Surrounding void is extremely low exergy, and there's this high exergy point source, and then there'll be pressures to sort of equalize that, and it's a bit like lightning strikes have been apparently work in a similar way, that you're getting kind of these differentials, these order differentials, and they kind of just come into existence to dissipate the order as quickly as possible. And some people have speculated that that's maybe what underpins what happens to life.
It's also a question of scale, isn't it? So time scale, not just geographic scale. So to a first approximation, our best understanding, or one of our understandings of where we're going to end up, is heat death. And then there will be no life, there will be nothing, there will be maximum entropy. And so although we might see on these small local scales now increases in anti-entropy over the longest periods, that's just a blip and it doesn't matter.
Well, that's basically what we expect to happen, and that the more life you see and the more complicated life gets, the quicker that should happen. So actually, all of our angsting about, at one scale, all of our angsting about what we're doing to the world is basically, it's just kind of inevitable. This would happen. Living systems will do this to their worlds. And in fact, the longer you leave living systems, the more efficient they'll get at
harvesting their world.
Yeah, harvesting their world and the local environment. So entropy is at the heart of this, and information can be thought of as anti-entropy. I mean, basically, that's how it's defined in communication theory. So Shannon Weaver's kind of ideas about measuring information are basically measures of in fact, it's called Shannon-Weaver entropy. It's a way of measuring entropy, which is...
Can I just say to anyone that's listening out there too, that we're not actually saying that we're hip with the massive degradation of our planet. We're just saying that it's going to happen one day, sooner or later, that it's all over.
Yeah, and well, I mean, for me, it's for me, the logical conclusion, if you look at a long enough timescale, is that we need to diversify our base in the universe if we want to maximise. So there is this debate at the moment as to whether we should be spending money on conserving everything here or moving off world. And I just think it's inevitable. If we solve the kind of carbon problem, we'll be doing something else as we get more intense at what we do to sort of degrade.
Well, the sun's going to die.
The sun will eventually die, absolutely. But it's also possible that even by harvesting things like geothermal energy, solar energy, with we'll have large scale effects on the planet. So, yeah. So for me, well, I mean, the basic population dynamics, basic evolutionary biology in a metapopulation world where you're thinking about lots of different populations of a species, of a system. If you're just in one place, then you're much more vulnerable to extinction than you will be if you're in multiple places. So, I mean, this is not to say that we shouldn't be attempting to do anything. That's quite the contrary. But I just think if we're really interested in the long-term persistence of
humankind
or of Earth-based life. And even if he just wants to be super altruistic about it.
Well, let's just fire off some viruses and some bacteria. And
well, that's one thing we could do. Absolutely.
There was I'm not sure I'm allowed to swear on the radio, but there was a Kurt Vonnegut story called the Great Space F, and they basically loaded up a rocket ship full of sperm and eggs. I think it was sperm and eggs, and they just fired it off out into the universe in the hope that it hit something somewhere. And that's probably the worst idea that you could do because you can see the metaphor. You understand the metaphor.
No, I do understand the metaphor, but certainly just shooting off a bunch of tardigrades and kind of hardcore extremophile bacteria. If we wanted to maximise the likelihood that Earth-based nucleic acid-based life persists in some sort of sense,
I think when most people think about sort of moving off planet, they don't imagine that we let humankind perish in a cesspit here and we send bacteria off to give colds to the rest of the universe.
That's true, but that's an all or nothing kind of sense. I mean, it's quite expensive to do these things
cousins.
Now. Sure, yeah.
It doesn't matter. No. It's either some shaved monkeys or some bacteria. You choose.
No, sure, but all I'm saying is that you could start doing cheap stuff now that would further the most altruistic goals that people have and people talk about when they talk about conservation.
Well, it's only altruistic in a little Earth sense, isn't it? Because we might be sending stuff off to completely destroy.
But that's what that's what the conundrum of altruism in an evolutionary world, right?
Who is us and who is them?
You can't have altruism without an outgroup, without a relatedness differential. Yeah. If everybody's equally related to everybody else, then there's no ability to have altruism. Almost by definition. Yeah.
So, are we going to send rockets into space? Are we going to save the world, or is something else going to happen? Tune in next week. Da, da, da.
Professor Sasha Dall and Professor David Hosken. That was their attempt to take down Dick and Dom as the ultimate radio duo on this morning's show. The results will be revealed next week. Oh, tense stuff! And up next, I would love really to invite to the show now, and this is a returning guest, so I'm really pleased about this. This is Karen Fraser MBE. She's a big name in the world of advertising. Today, she's talking alongside Matt Bourne. Matt is the Director of Communications at the Advertising Association. They're both on the show today, and I'm afraid it's time to break the Christmas silence. I'm going to play you some Christmas songs. I'm sorry, it's just got to be done. They're on the show today talking about Christmas ads and Christmas music. So I'm sorry, guys, but, it's time to get festive. Yeah!
How are
Hello,
you?
Karen. Fine, thanks. Well, welcome back to you, Karen. You came on last year, so I'm delighted to have you back with us. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Even
Excellent.
better than before.
I'll try not to bore you with the story about the my brother's drum teacher this time, because I don't know if you remember, but for Matt, for your benefit, I'm just going to get this out of the way, and then we can continue in a serious fashion.
No worries, go for it.
So I think it was the worst moment in my brother's drum teacher's life, because a little kid came to him, right, and he said, "Oh, can I learn the Monkey song?" And at first he thought, "Oh, what's he on about?" He didn't know what he meant. But do you remember the advert with Phil Collins and the gorilla, the Cadbury's advert, at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the gorilla playing the drums. So apparently that was what he meant, and it took him a while to translate that it wasn't Phil Collins, it was the Monkey song.
Oh.
And he was furious. I think he lost all faith in humanity. He was just gutted.
Yeah.
Anyway, warm welcome to you both. Thanks for coming on the show today. So I guess then it's time to kind of just say Christmas numerous times to get our listeners comfortable with this. So should we go for it? Christmas. Christmas. So there we go. Now we can talk about Christmas. Can't we? We've broken the Christmas silence.
Are you feeling it now?
I am feeling it now. Are you getting festive yet at all, both of you?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Yeah?
I'm getting there. Maybe not as much as last year, but definitely getting there.
It kind of seems to creep up on us this year, right? I must admit, I haven't really felt that festive, but I think I might. If I have some mulled wine tonight, we should be okay, I think.
Yeah, should we take that step? Are we ready?
I think so. Yeah. Well, anyway, let's get chatting about Christmas ads and specifically Christmas songs in Christmas ads, because this is definitely something. Because I think even if people haven't thought in detail about this before, everyone I think can name at least a few Christmas ads and at least a few Christmas songs as well. So they have a clear power in the world of advertising.
Oh, they do. Yes, Christmas ads and music are so linked. The music, it's emotional, it's evocative. I think it inspires memories of Christmas past as well. Certainly songs that we've researched have shown great longevity and really stick in people's minds.
And Matt, I did catch the end of the interview there a second ago. I'm going to be very cheeky, I'm afraid, because I heard you talking about an advert that sounds fantastic. I don't think I've seen it, actually, but KFC versus turkey. That was right. Chicken versus turkey.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the chicken versus turkey. The strapline, turkey comes and goes, but chicken is forever, which is very clever. But it has a Morricone kind of soundtrack to it. So if you're a fan of the classic westerns, you'll know the style of the ad. It's beautifully produced, amazing animatronics and effects on the chicken and the turkey. Well worth looking at.
There's a bunch of westerns on Netflix at the moment, so I've become a bit obsessed actually with Clint Eastwood recently. So that'll go down very well, I think.
Great films, but the use of songs across ads. We've obviously been watching the ones that have been launching. For this 2018 Christmas season, and they're featuring Visa's using Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas, where there's staff from high street shops singing a version. Heathrow Bears, which is a real cutie to watch. Paul Young is soundtracking now with a classic song from the 80s. So the choice of the music, and then we're still waiting to find out if John Lewis is using Elton John. Lots and lots of speculation. We don't know yet, but we're waiting to see. The choice of that music is so important within the advertising.
On the Elton John topic, did you see that? I think a store in London, changed its name to just John, and it made fans go crazy because they think, "Oh, is this proof that Elton John is going to be there?" We don't know.
Well, it's a big story this morning. The flagship store on Oxford Street. They do something with it each year, and yes, they've named it just John. That is pointing towards some kind of moment, I think, later this week.
But I mean, surely even just that fact that people are excited about that to me just screams about the power of advertising at Christmas. I don't know what it's like for both of you, of course, within that world. But for me as an outsider to it, and not really often thinking about advertising to any serious degree at all, is Christmas like a particularly important time for this?
It is. Christmas is a key quarter for retailers in particular, and I think this year we've got 6.4 billion spent on advertising. That's more than any previous year. It's up 5% on last year. And although we're all entertained and engaged and emotionally involved with ads, there's a serious point behind it, which is advertising helps to promote businesses, and that helps to keep people in jobs in the UK, and that keeps our economy turning. So we need all of this to happen, and we need the activity, and we need the commercials to keep our economy doing as well as it currently is.
Oh, fantastic! And in terms of the kind of music aspect to the Christmas ads, do you think this has kind of become stronger in recent years? Because I can name definitely a couple recently. I mean, obviously everyone's heard the Lily Allen cover, and probably immediately thinks of the advert that went with. I don't know whether that's becoming one of these kind of new trends in the kind of area that people put a lot of effort into getting the right song for the ad. I don't know if that's a new thing or if that's always been the case.
I think it's something that's certainly appeared over the last sort of 10 years or so.
Sure.
I think the music industry has changed dramatically over the way in which the competition for Christmas #1 has taken place. If you think about Top of the Pops and then X Factor, and I think that Christmas ads coming into the mix has been a way of taking a song and an artist to millions and millions of people across the UK, and really becoming that song that people think about when it comes to Christmas. And I think this batch of Christmas ads, if the rumours are true and Elton John is featuring in that John Lewis ad, Elton John is going to be a very, very, very front of mind artist associated with Christmas this year.
There must be, thinking about it, there must be an awful lot of competition between musicians to get onto the Christmas ads nowadays, because of course, as you just said there, I mean, obviously Elton John's already a massive star, but there must be, I can imagine there being so many competing stars to take those slots.
It's certainly an opportunity. It's a finite opportunity, if you like, to showcase, isn't it? Showcase as an artist, showcase your song. Elbow were singing, if you remember, they were soundtracking the John Lewis ad last year. I mean, I remember that being premiered as a song on Radio 2 the morning of the ad breaking.
Sure.
That sort of exposure for artists. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that... But, ads are also... they feature high-profile talent. Holly Willoughby is in Marks and Spencer's ad. Jim Broadbent, busy sort of voice-overing the Audi, Kevin the Carrot ad. Everywhere you look, there's really fantastic talent involved.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, I think it's definitely something that I do urge people to think about, I suppose, more closely than they might traditionally do. And in terms of pointing our listeners straight to a bit more information, it sounds like a great place to start would be, well, thinking about the work that you both are involved with. So I wonder if you could point our listeners somewhere online, actually, to check out a bit more about this.
Not a problem. We've got a Christmas Advertising 2018 page on the Advertising Association website. So that's ADASSOC, ADASSOC.org.uk. But as easily, I think if you simply type in Christmas Advertising 2018, you'll see a lot of those ads that we've been talking about coming up, and then keep looking for them, watching the telly, looking around. Look at those out of home ads. You won't be able to miss them. There's a lot of great ads to look at.
Thanks, Matt. And Karen, is there anything that you would like to add in terms of links for listeners or anything like that at all?
No, I think Matt's covered it pretty much.
Nice.
But hope everyone enjoys their Christmas ads and hope they enjoy their Christmas.
And you know what? It's time, both, and this is the evil part, because I'm going to force you now to choose a song. But you've got to... Okay, imagine this, right? So the kind of typical example where you're trapped on a desert island, you can only take one song with you. Well, imagine instead you're now trapped on this kind of Christmas snowy island, and you can only take one Christmas song. What are you going to take? Because it's going to get played on the show.
Oh, fantastic question. And do you know what? While we were working on this news release, I sat with the team and challenged everyone to play. We were given permission to play one song, one Christmas song, back in kind of September time. And I know mine is The Pretenders, 2,000 Miles. Absolutely.
Oh.
I can't hear enough of that song. So
amazing,
so
amazing.
That's mine. So please enjoy playing that.
I certainly will. Thanks, Matt. And Karen, I'm sorry, you're not escaping from this. What are you going to go with?
Favourite Christmas song from an ad?
Oh well, it can be from an ad, or if I won't restrict you though, Karen. I'm going to give you unlimited choice today. So, you know, I don't want to restrict your choice. It's up to you, really, basically. So
I'll go with the viewer's choice. I'll go with Lily Allen.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, nice one. It's a safe one as well because it is a fantastic song, isn't it? So that's great.
Yeah, very popular.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, both.
Thank you.
Bye, Ben.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but yeah, first Christmas song. I do apologise. Here it is. Was that alright? See, it wasn't that bad, and now you're feeling festive. There we go. I've well and truly broken the Christmas silence for you, and I did it for you, so you don't have to feel bad. Now you can go away and enjoy as many Christmas songs as you want. Well, thanks very much to Karen Fraser MBE, of course, can't forget that part, and Matt Bourne for coming on the show this morning. Absolute pleasure to have Karen again with us, actually, on Source here. Fantastic stuff. Now, in terms of the rest of the show for you this morning, it is nearly time for me to close up, but I'm just going to leave you, actually, with one more interview, and this is, and you know, I promised this at the beginning of the show, and I know this is a bit different now. Don't often attempt video game reviews, but in this case, I simply had to. Hitman 2 has actually come out this week, and I had the chance to have the makers of the game join me on the show. So here they are telling you a little bit about the game. It's a great game. They sent it to me to check it out. Fantastic graphics, spot on. Very different kind of gameplay, actually, because I won't spoil too much because I'll let the makers explain this, but there's introduced this brand new feature where targets will come in the game for only a limited amount of time, and you only get one chance to take them down. And guess who is the first one? It's Sean Bean. How cool is that? Anyway, I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to let the makers explain this. So this is all about the brand new game Hitman 2.
My name is Jakob Mikkelsen, and I'm the game director on Hitman 2.
My name is Markus Friedl. I'm the executive producer of Hitman 2.
So what sort of places will the player, Agent 47, get to explore in this sequel?
In Hitman 2, Agent 47 travels to several different places. We have a remote beach house in New Zealand, and then we have a high-profile racing event in Miami, sunny, and then we have a Colombian drug cartel in the jungle of Colombia, dark and dense. We have the sprawling slums and streets of Mumbai, and then an American suburb. And then to kind of finish it all off, we have kind of a remote, desolate island in the North Atlantic with kind of castle. I'm not going to spoil anything else.
And what kind of new features are available to players this time around?
This time around, we have of course building on what we made in 2016, but then we've added a lot of new things. And for me, I think the biggest one is we've added a new gameplay element with vegetation, where 47 can hide, the main character. So if he gets into trouble, he can hide in bushes, and then on top of that, it also works if there's a dense crowd of people. So if you get into trouble at the race event in Miami, you can dip into the crowd and hide and then wait for things to settle before you continue. On top of that, we've added a new element, which is a briefcase for his sniper rifle, which is a tool that might come in handy if you want to do long-range work. So the trick is to get the sniper rifle to kind of the best vantage point, but you can't do that with that thing out in the open. So the briefcase becomes very handy in that. On top of that, it serves as a distraction. So if people find it, they will put it in lost and found, and you have to reclaim it and all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. On top of that, we have flashbangs. We've done a lot of work underneath the hood to improve the characters and the behaviors and all the mechanics of the game, kind of all across the board as well.
Yeah, so major upgrades also to the AI, to our NPC systems. First and foremost, I think one standout thing is that NPCs are now able to spot you through mirrors, for instance, which previously have only been like a visual thing, but now it's actually a gameplay element that plays an important role. The picture-in-picture part is so you get a picture in the picture, as the name says, where especially as our levels, as our locations have grown so much, not only in size, but also in complexity, it's a very important feature to provide the player with information about events that might happen completely on the other side of the level. So it's about making sure that the player always has all the information at all times in order to form their perfect assassination plan.
Yeah, I think that the picture-to-picture is one of these things that actually help the whole sandbox aspect of the game, right? Because In a lot of other games, it's the room you're in right now that is alive, and then you move to the next one, and then that comes alive. Where in our Hitman 2 game, the entire thing is living at the same time. So the picture-in-picture actually kind of helps you, kind of reminds you that the parking garage you were just in 10 minutes ago, a body has been found there, and there will be consequences down there, even though you have moved to a different location in the level. So the game is very much about this living, breathing world where you have to eliminate the target. No one has to figure out what's happening, and it's up to you to use all your tools and all your skills to actually accomplish it.
And that living, breathing world is, as you say, always alive. And it's not just the 10-meter radius around you that is alive. No, it's the entire thing at all times that is always fully simulated and alive.
Tell us about the elusive target and Sean Bean's character. Yeah,
we have the first elusive target coming out 2 weeks after launch, and the idea about the elusive target is that he's there for a brief period of time, and you have one attempt at completing this mission, and then after that it's gone. And with Sean Bean, the whole notion, if you go online, then you will find memes about Sean Bean, who plays roles where he always end up dead. You know, Boromir, Goldeneye.
Ned Stark.
Yeah, Ned Stark. Oh, sorry for spoiling that. But he always ends up dead, right? So it was a perfect match, and I think our angle on it is that he plays the role of Mark Faber, another assassin who fakes his own death, kind of to disappear repeatedly. So it's kind of written into his role, this entire Sean Bean thing, and he did a great job with the whole voice recording of it, and we have his likeness in the game as well. So Sean Bean is in the game walking around as Mark Faber, and I think that's pretty cool. So the trick is for the player to figure out how to get close to him, how to deal with the mission at hand, and then get away, and you only have one shot.
I mean, if any explanation were needed, why Sean Bean?
Well, I think that's very much the whole Sean Bean keeps playing roles where he dies, and that's very fitting for a target in Hitman 2.
It was also, I do remember our script writers working on the script for the Mark Faber target, and as they were working on it, it became more and more clear that there is really only one guy in this world who can properly play this role, and that is Sean Bean. I do remember him getting the script for the first time, and he was reading it, and it was really, really grand experience to also see his reaction to it. Obviously, a very, very different way of working also for him, a video game rather than a movie. But he was great in taking that script in and providing us with feedback. We gave it a second round, a second iteration. It was a very, very interesting iterative process where he was truly great also to bring his expertise, his skills, his knowledge to the table. And at the end of the day, I think he co-created this Mark Faber character at the end. He made it his own, and he co-created it.
So you want the player to be more imaginative with the in-game assassinations. How would you finish off Mark Faber?
Well, that's the thing, right? Because I don't want to spoil it. But as in a typical Hitman mission, you would enter the mission area, and then you would kind of scope it out and figure out, okay, what's going on, where is he, what is he doing, and then from that formulate a plan. And I'm pretty sure that players will find that there are some things where they would go, okay, I can clearly see that this could be a potential thing. Personally, I would go with poison, I think, some kind, but that's up to you, and I think that's the beauty of the game, right? That is how do you complete it, and I'm really looking forward to the moment where we get people to play it and the players, they can enjoy it, and then after that point we're going to hear a lot of stories about, okay, so how did you finish the Mark Faber mission, right? And every player will have his or her own story, and I think that's the magic of this game, right? That's where it really works.
As part of the whole introduction of Sean Bean as our first elusive target, we let players also vote on the item that they want to unlock, and we had 3 items to choose from. So I would say actually that would be my choice. The item that won was an explosive pen that is also featured in the trailer with Mark Faber and Sean Bean. and I will choose that one.
So tell us about the Ghost mode.
Ghost mode is a new addition to Hitman 2. It's the kind of the first competitive multiplayer element we have in the Hitman universe, and the core idea is that two players play the same mission in parallel, and then at the same time a new character appears on the level, which is a target. Then you have to kind of eliminate the target before the other player, and then there's a small catch-up timer for the second player if he misses out, and then it's about getting to this character as target as fast as possible, and that's the whole trick of it, because it kind of forces you to move. You cannot just stand still and observe. You have to make a plan. You have to do something, otherwise the other player is going to get the point. And to be honest, this is where I can get to the edge of my seat when I'm playing this mode against other players, because I want to win and I want to prove that I'm the best assassin to this. So there's 5 targets in a mission, and it gets quite hectic, and we have seen people yelling in the offices when they were building this. It is nerve-wracking in a good way, and it's a lot of fun, and it's very, very tense. But it's first to the target, eliminate him, next target. 5 targets in a row.
It's also for us super exciting to see, because for the first time it's direct competition between Hitman players. Previously it was about scoring primarily, but with Ghost mode you can compete directly against each other. And then, as Jakob says, at the end of the day it's about finding out who is the best assassin in the world, other than Agent 47, of course.
That would be me.
What versions are available and when can we buy them?
Hitman 2 will release as standard, gold and collector's edition on PlayStation 4, Xbox One and PC, and it's out and available now.
So that was an interview all about the brand new game Hitman 2. Thanks, guys, for coming on the show to talk a little bit about that. Now, in other news as well, I had the chance to talk to James Lohman. He's the CEO of the Association of Convenience Stores, and David Williams. He's from the Union of Shop, Distributive and Allied Workers. And this was all about a story up in the news recently, actually, up in headline news, covered in headline news yesterday. The Association of Convenience Stores is calling for the government to introduce new protections for shop workers. The 2018 crime report found there were over 13,000 incidents of violence committed against retailers and staff over the last year, over a third of which resulted in injury. So I'm going to upload that full interview for you to listen to. I think it's a really important issue, and hopefully you can tune in and catch that online. That will be available through the Source FM website. But for now, I'm going to leave you, because the fantastic DJ Steve has just arrived. He will take over now. I'm going to leave you with this brand new song. This is a song actually produced by my very good friend. He's a very, very good friend of mine, actually. Guy, a.k.a. Phase 2, DJ and producer extraordinaire. Now, he's actually just dropped his brand new EP, Stranger Things. Here's the title track. I'm going to leave you with this. Thanks very much for tuning in today. Thanks for joining me, Ben, on your Thursday morning breakfast show. Thank you to all my special guests today. Thanks to Dick and Dom. You heard them again this morning. Thanks to Sasha and Dave, our professors. They were on the show again today. We'll release the results from that showdown next week, of course, don't worry. Thanks to the makers of Hitman 2, they came on the show today as well. Thanks to comedian Lucy Porter as well. And thank you to Karen Fraser MBE and Matt Bourne talking about Christmas ads today. But for now, here's Stranger Things by Phase 2.